Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
What we're doing, in case you're jumping in here, is we are in the middle of the 4 Agreements, Miguel Ruiz's book, and Reverend Michael has already begun with the first 2 agreements. Be impeccable with your word, and the second, don't take anything personally. And I get to bring the next 2 messages today and next Sunday on the 3rd and 4th. And what I wanted to say about them is just kind of do a little revisit, is that these Toltec teachings that Miguel Ruiz received from his father and grandfather are part of his own family lineage, but is a tradition. And the difference between this kind of spiritual teaching and most other spiritual disciplines or philosophies is that very often in the other forms, we're often given really highfalutin goals like enlightenment. Like someday you'll follow this path. This is the path to enlightenment. This is how you'll be a compassionate person to heal the world, and these big noble things. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to figure out how do you actually navigate and get there. And what I love about these is that Miguel Ruiz gives us this as the goal. And that is, the goal is happiness and greater love in your life. Now, who doesn't want that? No matter what you think your destiny is or what your soul's here for, or whether you think about those things at all or not, everyone wants greater happiness and love. And these simple practices are sort of beguiling. They're sort of like coming in through the back door, it seems to me. You know, like in my tradition, as I came up in the Catholic Church, I was always scrutinizing what sin I was committing at any given time, and we even graded them. You know, we had small sins or venial sins and really big sins that I tried to avoid completely. And being in middle school, I didn't feel like I was probably vulnerable to many of those big mortal sins, but the whole idea was really just trying to keep myself from committing sins, and that our sense of confession, it was a sacrament, it still is, to be able to relieve ourselves of that is a beautiful process. It really is, and it really restored me to a sense of wholeness and a sense of connection with God. And yet, it wasn't a true inventory. Those of you who are CPAs, you know, an inventory is the good stuff and the bad stuff. It was really just focus on these things, on the bad stuff, and just relieve yourself of it. And so sins were a way for me to recognize whether or not I was on my path. And if I could avoid them, I think the idea was that you would be good. And so this, simple teaching is really just kind of, it struck me this way, because when I first saw be impeccable with your word, or don't take anything personally, I thought, really, is that so bad? I mean, is it bad to take something personally every now and then? I mean, I was just trying to think, like, what's the margin of error, in that one? I was like, how far? It's like, and I was like, oh no, that's my old thinking. It's like these are actually ways that I could begin living a happier life moment by moment, choice by choice. And when you saw Reverend Michael last week, where he started with his own struggles with taking things personally, and that we could identify with those, and ended up in some place of deep understanding, greater understanding and compassion, that tells you that these things, if you follow them, are pretty deep-seated and will take you places you probably didn't know you could go. And so today, as we take a look at don't make assumptions, that's the one I get to talk about today. And so, what's an assumption? I'm so glad you asked. Let me give an example in my own life. Last week, and I have permission from my husband to share this story. Last week, I was at work late. It was on a Thursday, and I was trying to hurry up and finish up everything I was going to do because I'm off on Fridays, even though the office is still open. And so while I was trying to wrap things up, every time I'd put something away, I'd see something I hadn't done that somebody was waiting on for me. So I stay a little bit longer, do it a little bit. Anybody else know what that's like? It's like one more thing, one more thing. And I was waiting for that phone call. I was waiting for a message, when are you coming home, kind of thing. And I didn't get it until my text message goes off. I go, yep, there it is. And before I read the text, let me just say, this is from my husband, and I am a person who takes words very literally. I take things very literally in the words that you choose. My husband, on the other hand, I don't know, close enough is good enough to him. And no punctuation. So I would look at this text from him. It has 3 words: leave work now. I wasn't going with that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to ask a question. I said, did you mean for me to leave work now? Question mark. Because it better not have been that. Or were you telling me you're leaving work now? Question mark. And I sent that off. And I was kind of smug, waiting for an answer. Well, a couple of moments later, my phone lights up, and it's him calling. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're duking this out. You know, I guess that's where this is going. So I'm talking. I say hello, and he's all excited. He's loud. There's some background noise going on, and he goes, I'm so mad at you. You texted me, and I was pulling out of the parking garage, and I looked at my Apple Watch to see what you did, and I ran into a pole in the parking garage, and I knocked my rear view mirror off, and it's all your fault. And I was like, first of all, it was not my fault. You know, that I wasn't worried about. But I'm still stuck on the rear view mirror. I said, how did you knock your rear view mirror off? Wrap around a pole? Did you wrap around a pole or something? And anyway, I'm just trying to think how that rear view mirror came off. And so he said, I'm driving down the road and I can't see anything. And I said, you're driving down the road. I said, is your engine okay? Because how do you knock a rear view mirror? Shouldn't that be the last thing you're worried about? I mean, your engine should be wrapped around a pole or something. He goes, what, my engine? No, my engine's fine. And he said, I just can't see anything because that mirror, I just can't see it. I can't see, I'm blind, I'm driving blind. And so then I'm thinking, okay, so maybe there's a pole attached from the ceiling that had a sign on it, and that he must have ran into that, caught the top of his Prius. I mean, you know, it's like, how come he couldn't get out of the parking garage? So I said, is your windshield okay? What? My windshield's fine. Karen, he says, I knocked the mirror off my door, off my side door, and it's hanging down, and I can't see anything. I said, you said your rear view mirror. He goes, what? He goes, all the mirrors, all the mirrors look rear? Assumptions, right? We think we're communicating, right? 33 years, you're thinking that, you know, they must not have these conversations very often. Oh, no, all the time. And the good part is that love is really what holds us together. Wouldn't you say that? Yeah, we'll see if love can transcend this one. So you really see how it is that we can get into this assumption making and how difficult it is to always clear what we're thinking and our own perceptions and our own understandings, because I see our ego is always making judgments. It's always taking in information and making a decision, making meaning, and we paper our inner world with this meaning. We paper our inner world with all of the experiences that we had, the meanings that we made of them, and as soon as we do that, we generally move into a place not only of judgment, but also that we're right. And so our belief starts to glue it down and glue it to the walls and make it real and make it transparent. We just take it for granted. This is how everybody else sees it. This is the conclusion that we've drawn because we really haven't, in generality, checked it out with anybody. We're basically operating this way, and it becomes our filter through which we see everything else. And so in knowing that's how our assumption-making mind works, and this is really useful in the world of form because when we are taking information in and making meaning, it's really how we learn. And every time we encounter something that's different, we take that in, we revise our working theory, and we repaper that one down, and we now have grown a little bit, understand a little bit more, etc. Now, when we're dealing with people who themselves have filters, it's in communication with other people that this really becomes much more of a challenge. Because we all have these filters, and we all have these ways of seeing, and we don't always expect how the other person's going to show up. And so in this don't make assumptions, I'm going to give you today, just a heads up, 4 practices. Don't panic, they're not hard, and they're going to be paired up, so be very simple. The first practice is this, that when somebody comes up and surprises you with an unexpected response or lack of response or anything that is outside of your expectation, the first thing we typically do is we form a judgment, don't we? First, if somebody says something we don't expect, we go, why would they do that? And then what we do is we continue that line of questioning in our minds, and we come up with our own answers. We do it by looking that person up and down. We do some archival retrieval, and we pull up some other experiences with them, and now we've got a whole string of possibilities. Now we've got a thread to thread through, and now we start to see who that person really is all this time, right? We start to make judgments, and we start to also glue those down with being right. We haven't checked it out anyplace. Now, here's the thing. When we start checking it out, very often who we check it out with is not that person. We often get somebody else involved and say, you know, when Shirley came in, she did this and that and the other, and I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? And we start sharing over here. Now, that's when we go back to my Catholic training. The 8th commandment is bear false witness against the neighbor. In some cases, we're starting to step over that line a little bit, over into gossip, right? But what we really are trying to do innocently is try to just make sure we're right, defend ourselves, etc. The first practice really is, instead of going to judgment, the first place to go is to take that question that arises and use it as a place of curiosity. Become curious. Wonder really and truly, why did they do that? What were they thinking? What is different from the way I was thinking? Maybe I should take a step back and see what was driving me in that moment. There's a place to just stop and reconsider that there may be another story here. And as we take that step, and I'm making that the first practice because this is the way in which we sort of get a beat between the time we start racing off to judgment, that we could move into curiosity. And see, curiosity really makes us on a level playing field. This makes other being on our same plane. I'm not interrogating from a place of patronizing superiority and what's wrong, broken, and weird about you, or from a place of defensiveness that I feel scared and frightened, and so I have to defend myself and find out how you're attacking me and what you're doing wrong and how you're thinking less of me. Instead, I can ask an open-ended question with a sincere desire to understand. And that's really practice number 2, is to have the courage to ask the question. To take the question that arises naturally. Why would you do that? Why did this happen this way? What went wrong? And to take that out and engage with a person and really do some understanding and some listening. To become curious first, and then really open with a question that's open-ended and meant to connect. You see, when we do that, we have actually entered into a place of vulnerability. We have started to put our cards on the table, yes, but it has also drawn somebody else in. And here's our great capacity to bring greater love and understanding into the world for ourselves first, and then for others as we engage. Of course, they get to do whatever they want to do. And there may not be every single encounter that you come across you want to do that, but I will encourage you to know that it will be a great adventure if you do that, if you do ask that question. You see, our Unity peacemakers are using living room conversations in just this way of asking, what are your beliefs? How do you see things? And they're taking hot topics that are dividing families and dividing our country and our community, friends from us that we can't even, we have to block from Facebook because we can't have this kind of dialogue because we can't find a common place to sit around a table and have that conversation and ask a non-threatening question from a place of real, genuine interest. Because it's here that we begin to really listen and we begin to hear. And as we do that, we begin to change and to grow. And you know what? I truly believe this is the pathway to changing our world. Thank you. Miguel Ruiz says that this one agreement, don't make assumptions. He's got 4 of them. He's only got 4. But he says, if you just take this one and do it, he says, it has the power to completely transform your life. Transform your life. Can you begin to see how that could be true? That you could actually start to listen and to be observant in your world in a whole different way, where you don't assume and that you seek greater understanding and communication. Our living room conversations also will continue into August, so check them out on the website if you'd like to be part of a conversation. The third practice that this teaching can bring you to is to begin to have the courage not only to ask questions, but to have the courage to ask for what you want. I don't know about you, but I've had the understanding at times in my life, see if this resonates with you. If you really loved me, you would give me everything I want. You would know what I needed. You would give it to me because you love me. And not only because you love me, not only would you give me the things that I don't have to ask you for at all. I don't have to tell you what I'm thinking, but actually you just love me so much you know. And not only that, but you love me so much that you know intuitively what to give me that I didn't even know I wanted until I got it. It's so, I'm just in such love. Does anybody live like that? Because I don't know anyone like that. I would say that that is our greatest misunderstanding in our love relationships. That's not the only one. There's a lot of them. That's why there's 5 love languages. That's why we're going to have a wonderful workshop. But this is the thing. We are always, very often, just operating from our own filters, from our own backgrounds, from our own upbringing, from our own experiences in the past. We are defensive, we are judging, and we are ultimately right. Everything in our circle, in our inside world is right, and of course, everything out there that doesn't match it is wrong. And so the power of being able to recognize that that may not be so enables us to use this third practice of asking for what we want, knowing as mature adults that we may not be granted that wish. But we cannot be granted that wish unless we ask, unless we put it out there, unless we say it out loud. We can't expect people, even those who love us deeply, to intuit that and to get it right. So asking for what we want makes it available to the other person to know and to have the choice. And maybe to open up to a dialogue to say, you know, I can't really give you that. Or I can only do it sometimes, or I'll try really hard to remember, but that isn't something that comes to me naturally, and here's what I would do, and here's something I could give you right now. Here's how I could do it. Here's what I am willing to do. That kind of conversation begins to not only open us up in vulnerability, but also open us up in greater intimacy. And that's true no matter what the nature of your relationship, love relationships, obviously, but in every relationship, work relationships, partnerships, in business and in projects and that sort of thing, saying what we really want, asking for it, and putting it on the table with a great deal of confidence that people want to respect us enough to at least hear it, and will do whatever they can to make that work. And that's where the conversation can take you someplace. The fourth practice is much like it, so third and fourth go together, and that is to ask others what they want. Now, some of us are going, oh, I'm going to step back from that. I'm not going to ask them what they want because then I'm their slave. I have to do everything they ask of me, right? No. You don't surrender your authority or autonomy. You, in that moment, can still decide whether or not you are able to or willing to do that thing, and maybe renegotiate and say, I hear that. Thank you for letting me know that. Here's what I can do. Here's what I could do. Here's what I could do right now. You see? Can you see how this could actually start to transform your life, and that on a choice-by-choice, practice-by-practice basis, you could actually find yourself in a life of greater happiness and an opportunity for greater love to flow through into your life? By not making assumptions, by doing as Jesus said, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. For anyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door is opened. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen shares two stories about assumptions that lead to much greater depth and understanding. One is a story about Muriel, who is a woman who has advanced Alzheimer's. She's at the stage where she no longer communicates. She no longer, she can't talk, but also she doesn't seem to take in information, and she doesn't take direction. And so, but what she's able to do is walk all over her care center, night and day, and keeps the staff looking for her and wondering where she is and worried about her safety, until one day she discovers a full-length mirror. And as she's making one of her nervous walks, she comes across it and she stops and she sees her own reflection in the mirror. And she's transfixed by this and spends several hours standing there and begins talking to that image in the mirror in her own, unintelligible to others, but in her own language. And when her doctor comes on his rounds, the staff tells him about her new practice, and so he joins her at the mirror and stands over her shoulder and looks into her reflection. And he begins his visit with her as casually as he does all of his patients and speaks to her. And when he was done, he noticed there were tears in her eyes. One can imagine that last vestige of being really seen and really connected from a human level, where her humanity was noticed, that she still mattered, that she's still in there somewhere. And he spoke to her in a way she could hear. Beyond assumptions. The other story she tells is of her friend Helen, who's a psychotherapist, who attended a seminar by Carl Jung, that's it, Carl Gustav Jung. His grandson was the one who was doing the seminar, and they were doing dream interpretation. And so in the seminar, there were cards filled out, and people would put their dreams on and send them up for interpretation by Jung's grandson. And the card that came up, one of the cards, had on it a dreamer who dreamed that Nazi atrocities had been committed on that dreamer, and that they had their own self-worth and their humanity had been destroyed and taken apart, and that they had suffered unimaginable pain and torture, and wanted to know what could possibly be the meaning of this dream. Now, Helen is in the audience. And as an experienced psychotherapist, she's already worked up the interpretation, and she's just waiting to hear what Jung's grandson would say. And so upon reading this one aloud, what he invited everyone who was present to do was to stand and remain in silence. And at the end, he invited everybody to be seated and went on to the next. Later said that the reason is that sometimes our suffering and pain is so deep that our techniques and our capabilities fall short. And in the end, the only thing we can really do is to stand in common humanity and bear witness to unimaginable suffering so that no one suffers alone. Dr. Riemann says this: perhaps a willingness to face such shared vulnerability gives us the capacity to repair the world. Those who find the courage to share a common humanity may find that they can bless anyone at a mirror, anywhere, in an auditorium. Don't make assumptions. Be willing to go deeper. Be curious, ask questions, and wait for the answer. Ask others what they want. Tell others what you want. Very simple. Transform your life. And don't be surprised if you end up healing the world. God bless you all.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.